Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Well, it looks like, I'm looking around the studio and it's just me. So, today, Jason and I are going to be side by side on the broadcast. And I'll be talking about some tips from my unfinished, not for sale, not published book. And some commentaries on things I think might be food for thought as we go down the drain. I was talking with one of our instructors last night. He lives on the West Coast. And he was telling me that some banks have just closed. Banks have closed. That's something that we're not used to, right? We are used to going to the corner or downtown or wherever your bank might be in your hamlet and being able to make those transactions. I know that we've shifted from in-person banking and cash banking to more and more online and more electronic banking. But what would happen if your bank closed? And let's say it were a small, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, or 6 branch bank. What would happen? What would you do? Let's say your savings happens to be in that bank, your checking happens to be in that bank, and the bank fails, just shuts up, shuts down, closes. Sign on the door says closed. No warning. Well, I decided to do a little bit of research about failed banks. And there's a website that says www.fdic.gov. FDIC stands for Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Federal Deposit Insurance, and the operative word is corporation. And it says since 1933, no depositor has lost a penny of FDIC insured funds. Well, that sounds kind of reassuring, doesn't it? No depositor has lost a penny. Have they lost tens of thousands? It doesn't say that. It just says they haven't lost a penny. So you have to read the words. Now, does it mean that when the bank has failed, that they immediately got their funds? Like, they made a call, and they called the number on the door that said closed on the front door of the bank. They call that number and they say, "Oh yeah, you're fine, no problem. Get your money over here at this other bank." That's not what happens. So I'm looking at FDIC.gov/individual/failed/banklist.html. And all you have to do is search for closed banks. And you'll see some search engine results, and you can click on the ones that make sense to you. And I clicked on one, and there's a list of failed banks since October 1st of 2000. How many are there in the United States? 561. 561 bank failures. And, April 3rd one failed. That was called the First State Bank in Barboursville, West Virginia. Then the Erickson State Bank in Erickson, Nebraska failed. Then the City National Bank of New Jersey. City National Bank of New Jersey. That kind of sounds like it's a big bank, doesn't it? Oh, it may not be, but City National Bank of New Jersey in Newark, New Jersey failed in November 1st, or on November 1st of 2019. So there's plenty of these banks that have failed. And why am I telling you this? So you know that this can happen. Now, what would you do? What would you do if you thought there was a possibility of bank failures? What would you do? Well, in my world, I would go get some cash. And I would make sure that I had cash on hand for what? Well, let's say someone were arrested in the family, on trumped up charges. It's happened to our neighbor. She was arrested. Drugs were found underneath her front porch, her back porch, that belonged to a jailer at the sheriff's office. Sheriff knew exactly where to look. They found a vial of pills, and the pill label said the name of the person who worked at the jail as a jailer. So they arrested my neighbor. And so she was in jail, in the local county jail, for a week because she didn't have $1,500 to post bond. Happened on the weekend. Banks were closed. It was a mess. So, do you have any cash on hand? Do you think you should have cash on hand? So, let's say your bank fails, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Company says, you're covered, don't worry about it. We got you covered. And we'll process that. Now, we have up to 7 years to get you your money back. Do you think you'll lose your house by then? You've got your homeowner's insurance. You've got your gas bill, electric bill. Let's say you have an oil burner, your oil heating bill. Let's say you have water, your water bill. All those bills, taxes, and taxes. So you have all those things, mounting up, and your bank's closed. So obviously you should diversify, right? You shouldn't have all your eggs in one bank. You should have them spread out. But we're lazy. And, we like Sally. She's at the bank. She's our good friend. We don't know where she lives, but she's our good friend. She smiles every time we go in there. So we keep all of our eggs in her bank. That may not be the best thing to do. So you may want to consider getting some cash out. When? Well, you got plenty of time. Banks don't close till, let's say, 4 o'clock, 4:30 today. So you got plenty of time. Should you wait till Monday? I don't think so. And what denomination should you have that cash in? Well, ones aren't all that important. 5s and 10s and 20s and 100s. That makes sense. Because what would you do if you wanted to buy food and your bank is closed and your debit card doesn't work? And you go to write a check on your checking account, and the cashier says, I'm sorry, but your bank is closed. You may not even know your bank is closed. They close without telling you. They just put a sign on the door. You find out when your funds are not available. You think I'm kidding? Well, don't believe me. Research it for yourself. We are living in some really dangerous and serious times. Let's say your bank was in the combat zone, and there are plenty of combat zones in the United States of America right now. These combat zones are on fire. Tear gas, smoke grenades, rubber bullets, Molotov cocktails, buildings burning, firemen not putting them out, police not protecting property. Who wants to go there? We're finding out here at the farm that the internet is really unstable. Why is that? Is it because the central office somewhere between us and wherever we're trying to connect has been burned down? I don't know. I really don't know. But maybe the infrastructure is on fire in various locations. Actually, I'm sure it is. That leads me to the point where I'm thinking about Netflix. Well, we can sit back and watch Netflix, right? Well, maybe not. Is the internet working? Is the internet working between you and Netflix? I don't know. I can tell you that the internet throughput has gone down at least 25%. I can tell you that CenturyLink is more unstable than it ever was, and it was lousy to begin with. They provide internet services to hospitals and businesses and of course, residential customers. So all are in jeopardy who use the internet. So we think, well, we'll just order it online. Well, maybe not. There have been many times in the past several months when I've tried to order something online and I can't. I can't because the internet went down. Imagine this. Imagine you go to buy something on the internet and you order it. Let's say it's on eBay. And you bid on something, you walk away from your computer, your bid is in, you win the bid, the internet goes down for a couple days, and you haven't paid for it. Now the seller's frosted with you because you haven't paid. Does the seller know that you have an internet outage? No. The seller's trying to communicate with you and you don't answer. Now he's even more frosted. You're tying him up. You bought this thing, you bid on it, you won, but you haven't paid for it because the internet's down. So what do? Do you wait it out? Do you call your friend and say, hey, I bought this thing. Would you pay for it for me? Do you think that's going to happen? This is a big problem. We've been conned into thinking that online is good. It's always going to work. Voice over IP phones. You don't need a landline. Just have voice over IP. But the internet's unstable. So if the internet's unstable, how does the voice over IP work? It doesn't. That's why when you get voice over IP or VoIP phone service, they tell you don't depend on this. Don't depend on this for emergency phone calls. What they're telling you is it doesn't work so well. We're living in times that many have not imagined. Here at USA Prepares for almost 10 years, or about 10 years, we've been telling you that this was going to happen. And here we are. Food shortages, supply chain disruptions. Our power has been flaky here. So we have a choice between, well, we have three choices for electricity here. Off-grid. Off-grid means we don't use the grid at all. We generate our own electricity. And if the sun's not shining, fire up a generator, charge the batteries, and we're good to go as long as the generator works and as long as we have fuel. And maintenance supplies to keep the generator running. And to know how to do it. We could use on-grid, as long as that's working. Or we can use hybrid. And hybrid is a cross between off-grid and on-grid. So we could use off-grid for whenever we want and on-grid for whenever we want. And we could have the system, the solar system with the inverter, make automatic, pre-programmed decisions for us when to switch between on-grid and off-grid, depending on sun, depending on battery charge condition, and so forth, and load. So there are a lot of things to think about, and one of them, I'll tell you when we come back. You know, Seattle's in a lot of turmoil right now. A chunk of the city's been turned over to armed occupants. Let's talk about that when we come back with that. Well, let me just take a U-turn and go back where I was for just a couple minutes. So I was looking at the internet about banking and which banks are still open, and I happened to find a link to New Jersey, NJ.com, NJ.com. And there's an article that says, will banks close due to coronavirus? Which banks are still open? And there's a list that says Bank of America has not yet announced branch closings. Capital One has closed branches in Freehold, Island, Jersey City, North Plainfield, Hoboken, and Union City. Chase Bank has closed about 1,000 branches. 1,000 branches. Connect One Bank has closed branches in Princeton, Ridgewood, and Englewood. This just happens to be New Jersey. What I'm trying to give you is a flavor for what is happening across the country. Lakeland Bank, Lakeland, has announced that starting on March 23rd, the only services that would be available would be drive-up or by appointment. Ocean First has closed branches in Red Bank, Homedale, Monroe, Long Branch, Lakewood, Harrogate Community, Leisure Village, Point Pleasant, Clinton, Ventnor City, Medford, and Freehold. Now, this just happens to be a couple of the banks. There's a list that's much longer than this. What I'm saying is availability of the bank and your funds in person is not what it used to be. Is that a problem for you? It may not be. You may have adopted the online banking, electronic banking, remote banking, debit card banking, direct deposit banking. You may be already there. Not everybody is. So PNC Bank, that's a Pennsylvania National Bank, is only operating in the drive-up mode. TD Bank has closed its branches in several locations. Valley National Bank had closures. Wells Fargo hasn't, as of the article, hasn't announced yet. More banks. Bottom line is, will it affect you if your bank branch closes or the entire bank closes the brick and mortar operation and just says, listen, y'all just sign up. We got, a website and you can do all your transactions there, but you can't come in and we don't do cash anymore. Is that a problem for you? We're moving away from cash. No. What's good about cash? Well, there's several things that are good about cash. Number one is if you use cash, you settle that transaction right then and there on the spot. It's done. You buy something, you pay for it, you pay cash, you take possession of what you just bought, and it's done. Nobody owes anybody anything. It's settled right then and there on the spot. And cash, if you want it to be, can be anonymous. You can buy something, you can pay for it with cash, and you don't have to say, listen, here's my name, here's my address. You just buy it, pay for it, and you're done. I kind of like that. I bought a bunch of things with cash. There are people who have these yard sales or people who have go to flea markets. There are people who advertise on Craigslist. Most people who advertise on Craigslist don't take credit cards, right? They certainly don't want to take your check. They don't know you from Adam. So cash is king. Sometimes you even get discounts for paying cash. Why is that? Well, there's something called a merchant discount. So if you go to any big box store, or if you buy something on the internet, the bank charges a merchant discount. Now, don't get all excited because it's not a discount. What they do is they discount the amount of the transaction, and the bank takes their cut. So it's typically around 3%. So if you buy something for $1 and use a credit card, there's a transaction fee and there's a merchant discount. So it probably costs 35 cents for the transaction plus 3% for the discount. So the merchant doesn't get that much. The merchant gets less than the amount you pay. So it costs you more in the long run. Okay, so it's just me today. And if you decide that you'd like to call in and talk about some tips that you have that work, that are practical, that you absolutely positively know work and you can recommend them and stand behind them, you can give us a call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. I'll be talking about some tips from my book in just a few minutes, but at the bottom of the hour news, we heard Nancy Pelosi say that there are statues that need to be removed from the Capitol. 11 of them they've got targeted. Well, one of my questions is, what about the Lincoln Monument? People go there. I used to go there in the good old days to the Capitol and visit and see the Lincoln Monument. What about the Washington Monument? That thing is 555 feet tall. The tallest monument, I think, in the world. 555 and a half feet tall. It took decades to build it. Well, Washington was a criminal, against the crown. He was one of the ringleaders of the rebellion against the crown. He was a big land grabber. He grabbed land that the crown thought that they owned. I'm talking about England. So some people would consider him a criminal. I guess that would be the English, right? And some of his cohorts, like Benjamin Franklin and Paul Revere and Thomas Jefferson, and James Madison, James Monroe, John Hancock. So when you look at it, it's history, right? Does that mean it needs to come down? Well, there are lots of statues that have come down. Statues of Adolf Hitler, they came down. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's history, and I think it will be negative taking these statues down. Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson. If we're going to take them down, what about Martin Luther King and Crispus Attucks? What about war heroes? War heroes get people killed, right? What about presidents who start wars? I don't know. All the presidents that were involved when wars began with the United States, what about their statues? Do you want to take them down? You can take George Washington off the Federal Reserve note? The one that has the number 1 on it? Or how about Lincoln? He's on the 5. So do we need all new currency? Because we're going to tear down these statues? Well, President Trump said, quote, "I'll straighten out Seattle," end quote. So he threatens to take on the cop-free autonomous zone himself. He says he won't let the city be occupied by anarchists, and criticizes a response from what he calls a pathetic mayor who said it was a block party. Okay. So Seattle's been taken over, and the president refers to these people as anarchists. That kind of sounds negative, doesn't it? Anarchy. Well, let me read you the definition of anarchy. You might not think it's so negative. According to Wikipedia, anarchy is the state of a society being freely constituted without authorities or without a governing body. It may also refer to a society or group of people that totally rejects a set hierarchy. The word was first used in 1539, and anarchy means an absence of government. Do you know that our farm might be considered anarchy? We don't have government in our farm. Now, I'm the head of the household. Everybody makes decisions. Everybody has input. But we do what we want because we think it's the right thing to do. So what I'm saying is when people talk about anarchy, that doesn't necessarily mean murder, rape, mayhem, violence, Molotov cocktails, insurrection. Doesn't necessarily mean any of that. It just means without rule. We have a little hamlet here in Missouri. There are 100 people or so who live in the town. I don't even live in the town. Our farm's outside of town. The town is 100 people. The post office has 100 mailboxes, inside the post office. Half of them are available. So only 50 post office boxes out of the 100 that are available are used. And I think that number's in steady decline. Well, there's no mayor. There's no city hall. There's no town council. There's nothing. And you know what? It works fine. So, sounds to me like anarchy. Anarchy is a state of society being freely constituted without authorities or a governing body. Our little hamlet does not have a governing body. It's unincorporated, not incorporated, unincorporated. And you've seen those signs, leaving the incorporated district of, whatever it is. That means that town or city is a corporation. That's what that means. If it says incorporated, incorporated city of. If it's unincorporated, it's not a corporation. Ours is not a corporation. And you know what's neat about that? There are no dues. We don't have to pay dues to be a member of the corporation. Taxes. We don't have to pay a mayor's salary or the mayor's secretary or the secretary's assistant or for the building or for the maintenance of the building or for the heat of the building and electricity and water and, insurance, and the list goes on and on. We don't have to pay for any of that because we don't have it. Is that nice or what? So, to me, that kind of sounds like anarchy without rule. And I like it. By the way, that's why we're here. Because I did not want to be in a location where people would tell me, well, no, you can't build it there. You can't build your house there. It's too close to the property line. It's too tall. No, you can't put your barn there. It doesn't match. It's the wrong shape. It's too close or it's too far from something. We don't have any of that. There's nobody to, when we built our house, there was nobody that inspected the wiring. There was nobody that inspected the roof, the plumbing, the foundation, the footer. Nobody said, whoa, you can't move in there. You don't have a handrail to your door. You have to have a handrail so you don't fall when you're climbing up your stairs. That happens in lots of places. Nobody approved the plans. Nobody even saw the plans. If I wanted to build a swimming pool, I would build a swimming pool. My son and I would flip a coin to see who got on the backhoe. And we would dig a swimming pool. I'd probably let him win. The whole family would be involved in figuring out where it was going to go, what shape it was going to be, how deep it was going to be, and whether it was going to be made out of concrete or whether it was going to be made with steel sides and a vinyl liner and a sand and vermiculite floor. I mean, there'd be plenty of us involved in the decision, except the government would not be involved in the decision. We don't need some building inspector to tell us what to do, where to put it, how to do it, etc. We don't want that. That's why we live where we live. I'd like to discuss tomato cages with you. And what we decided to do this year. But first, Kathy in Ohio, welcome.
Hi, Vince. How are you? This is Kathy.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
It's great to hear your voice.
Vince, thank you.
Yeah.
Same to you. Vince, I wanted to tell you that I had noticed some things to me that were, more disturbing than ever. One of them was the fact that I had been going online to get certain things, and they're just not available. As soon as somebody says, "Oh, I found this online," they're gone, or it's on sale. Within minutes, it's gone. And I guess what you said all along is if you need to get it now. The other thing that I noticed yesterday, I was out shopping. I had to go get gas for the car and things like that. And I went by an estate sale, and there were so many cars there that the road was blocked. It was just swarmed. I have never seen anything like this in my life. So I just think people that can't find things are probably going to turn to like Craigslist or eBay or estate sales and things like that. So those are the couple things, but I'm just saying that I'm normally a pretty optimistic person, but boy, it just seems like it's just steamrolling at us, and there's like no way to stop it.
Okay, I absolutely agree with that. And Kathy, we've been saying this for about 10 years, literally. We said this was coming. We didn't know exactly when, but what we thought the result would be what I've termed the corona panic. And initially I said that the virus is real, but the fallout from the virus, the domino effect from the virus is going to be really, really bad. People are going to get sick. People are going to die. And yeah, it's true. But there's a lot of conspiracy theories. And I said, forget all that. But what we should focus on is surviving the fallout, surviving the corona panic, which was my term, corona panic, which would be supply chain cracks, failures, breakage. And here's what we're seeing. The violence is all part of that. It's part of the corona panic. It's part of the straw that broke the camel's back, which was George Floyd, etc. Here's what I found out. That in Lebanon, Missouri, there is an Aldi store, A-L-D-I. Aldi was the only store that Walmart is concerned about. The only one that Walmart can't beat is Aldi. Aldi has fewer employees, and they have a streamlined operation. They can sell food for less than everybody else. And I'll tell you what happened in Aldi, and it's not just in Lebanon, Missouri. I believe it's all over the country, and it's exactly what you're talking about, Kathy. We'll be right back. Kathy's with us, and I'm so glad you called in, Kathy. So, class, Aldi, A-L-D-I, is the only store that Walmart cannot compete with and sell for less. Aldi is an extremely well-run organization. They sell mostly food, but over the years they've branched out into Chinese junk, and they would sell hamburger flippers, waste paper baskets, small kitchen appliances, all from China. So they had roughly 2 aisles that you could go down out of maybe the 8 aisles in the store that had this Chinese junk. So it looked like food, which was their main operation, was selling food, was losing ground to Chinese junk. And I believe that's because they didn't have the supply of food. Otherwise, they would stay with what they were good at. So they brought in this Chinese junk, and it occupied more and more shelf space. And then it occupied less shelf space. Now, the shelves are still there, but the Chinese junk is disappearing. And I believe that's because Chinese junk is not being imported into this country anymore. So what's here is here. Now, what does that mean? I think that means electronics. I think that means everything else that the Chinese make, TVs, DVD players, computer monitors, computer electronics, all those things, Wi-Fi routers, all the things that are ubiquitous, all the things that you go to almost any store and buy. Well, that supply is being depleted. And so is the supply of everything else. And what I've found is that if you want to buy good quality, you're going to have to buy vintage. What that means is something made around 50s, 60s, 70s, an older product when they made things much, much better. And what's happening is, as Kathy said, she's absolutely right. things are disappearing very fast. And if you want to buy like a vintage ratchet on eBay, you know, a brand that would be a top quality, and it doesn't have to be Snap-on, which is, you know, one of the most expensive. But if you want to buy Craftsman, made in USA, SK Wayne, which is also known as SK, USA manufactured, Husky, which was made in USA in the 70s and 60s. Those tools are way more expensive now than they were when they were new. Used on eBay, they're more expensive because we can't get the quality of those products anymore. And what I found when I wanted to buy some food processing equipment, vintage, mechanical, good old standby stuff, it's really, really hard to get. And the prices are 2 and 3x of what they would normally be in the good old days, like January. Kathy, are you finding the same thing?
Oh, absolutely, Vince. I wanted to get a food saver cap to go over my jar to seal it, and it normally runs about $10. They had them on eBay for $105 for one, and you can't get them. I've checked many sources. They're just all out of stock right now. The other thing with Aldi's is you're absolutely right. I went in about a week ago, and they used to have 3 or 4 shelves of the non-food items, mostly the Chinese things. There was probably 2% that was there. The rest, they tried to fill it in with food, and the other 2 aisles had the 2%, and that was all they had. And they have a big sign saying, "We're sorry, but we are not going to get everything that's in our ad," which is virtually almost nothing now. The other thing, Vince, I want to mention before I have to go is always check your receipt. Many times when they're ringing things up, there's a mistake on the receipt. And if you can catch it before you get home, then you don't have to go back. Or sometimes you have to go in a different line and go to customer service if you catch it. But check your receipt. And now a lot of places are not taking any returns. So if you're going to buy like a pair of shoes for someone else and they can't try them on, I would say, be careful because you may not be able to take them back.
Yeah, it used to be, Kathy, it used to be that, let me give you an example. So when I was growing up, let's say there was a sale on boys' pants or boys' shirts. And my mother wasn't sure which size to buy. Let's say I was not with my mom for me to try it on. And if it was on sale, but it was not going to be on sale tomorrow, she would buy one of them. Exactly, let's say the pattern, the style, etc. She'd buy it knowing that it probably wasn't going to fit. But what it did was it would hold the price because she could bring it back when they got more and swap the size that didn't fit for a replacement that did fit at the sale price. You can't do that anymore because now stores don't want to take things back. It's exactly what you're talking about. Kathy, do you have a little bit more time or not? Kathy, will you be able to stay with us or do you have to go?
Yes, I may.
That'd be great. Thanks so much. Kathy's going to be back with us, and we're talking about tips from the book and tips that she has. Please pay attention. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked. Number 2 of USA Prepare. So we're sharing some tips from my unpublished book. I've got some more. Kathy is with us in Ohio. Kathy, do you have other tips that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, Vince, I have a couple. I wanted to mention a couple things that maybe people could stock up. I know we've been talking about preparing, but maybe trying to get as much of the shelf-stable foods that you can get. Maybe things like popcorn, tea, cornstarch, rice, honey, sugar, those types of things, because a lot of things you can't keep for long term, but those things you can keep a long time. Even things like your vinegars, beans, corn syrup, flax seeds, those types of things. The other thing, too, that I have been stocking up on is I've been buying some of the things that I use for like my natural remedies. I've been buying in bulk, like activated charcoal. It's expensive in the little tubs, but if you buy it in bulk, it's not so bad. Things like diatomaceous earth or bentonite clay, those are all things that you could use down the road that virtually last a really long time, especially if you keep them well sealed and maybe even put them in mason jars or vacuum seal them somehow, or if you can freeze them. But those are things that we may not have access to, some of our first aid type things. And right now I could still get them, but I am noticing more and more those types of things that are going out where you just can't find them. But those were two things that hit me. And the other thing was thinking about maybe in the fall, like, do you have work boots? Do you have winter boots? What about tennis shoes? Because a lot of our tennis shoes are made in China. So maybe start looking around now while you can still get them. Because I don't know if you don't have shoes and socks and T-shirts and those types of things, which those are hard to find too. The T-shirts, socks, the underwear, all that. I mean, I think you can get them online, but in the stores, they're virtually sold out. I haven't seen any, very, very, very little. And it's just a random size, like extra small or 3X or something like that I've seen.
All very valid points, Kathy. And I've looked for, we'll call them sneakers, all-purpose sneakers, not these flimsy, lightweight, all fabric netting across the top. I don't want that. I want durable footwear. And what I found was the price is going up and up and up, and you're getting close to $75, $80, $90, $100 for a pair of sneakers, which is insane to me. So what I did instead was I bought leather boots, and I found them. And normally I would not want to buy used footwear, but I cannot justify spending $300 and $400 for a pair of boots. But I did find boots in my size on eBay from the Thursday Boot Company, like the day of the week, Thursday. And it was about roughly between $100 and $120 for a pair of used boots. But these were the kind of boots that somebody would wear once and say, you know what? I don't think I want them. You have to polish them. And so they were like brand new. Not a scratch on them at, 1/3 the price. So I was thinking that instead of sneakers, which are, great for running around, I would just wear boots. And they would two pairs would probably last the rest of my life. So that's why I switched from sneakers to boots. But you're absolutely right about things are in very, very short supply. And you're absolutely right about shelf-stable foods. For example, popcorn. I know for a fact that popcorn will last about 20 years if you keep it in a sealed container. 20 years. How do I know? Because I'm using popcorn that's 20 years old. Vinegar. Vinegar, if you buy it at Walmart, it comes in a flimsy container. If you buy white vinegar, I'm talking about gallons. If you buy it at Menards, it's the same vinegar, but it's in a much heavier screw top container rather than one of those pop-off tops like milk comes in. And so it's a much heavier container. It's got a better cap, and it's the same price. So, and do you need white vinegar? Absolutely. Why do you need it? Well, it's a disinfectant. If you know somebody who has respiratory illnesses and they use a nebulizer, one of those air pumps with a hose, and maybe albuterol or something like that. Well, it needs to be cleaned every day. What do you clean it in? Vinegar. And what size container would you use? Well, peanut butter comes in a 1-pound small jar. It's plastic. You take those parts out of the nebulizer. You put it in the plastic peanut butter jar with a lid that seals. The plastic screw-on cap or lid. You put in about a tablespoon of white vinegar. You shake it all around, put it down, shake it, put it down, shake it. 5 minutes later, You pour off the vinegar. You rinse it 6 times or so with maybe 2 ounces per time of filtered ProPure water. Put it in a bowl with a paper towel over it and under it. Let it dry out. And that's how you do it. But you need white vinegar to do that. So there are a lot of things that, that you need, and you ought to get them now because the cities are burning. And you talked about rice. We've got rice. Where do we keep the rice? In the refrigerator. Why? Because it prevents the bugs from popping out. You can keep it in the freezer too. And flour. You can keep flour in the freezer. We do. We try to buy it in the large bag, and we keep it in the freezer. We always freeze flour immediately upon purchase. Always. Because it kills those little bugs that you can't see. That's not pleasant to think about this, but that's the way it is. If you buy bread from the Chinese factory outlet in the plastic bag, it's got the same flour that you would have with the same little bug eggs in it. It's all there. It's just they haven't hatched yet. Kathy, any comments on that?
Oh, Vince, I agree, and I think you're very wise with your boot idea because those are going to last. Tennis shoes, you're lucky, especially with you having on a farm, you're lucky if they would last you even a season, whereas these boots are probably going to last you for years. I think you're really wise. I think that vintage things, older things, that if you can find them on eBay or out when you're out, it's the smartest thing we can do right now. But I agree with the food and like your idea of buying the good quality items.
Okay. So I'm at eBay right now. I see Thursday boots. I have a pair called the President, and I have a pair called Captain. And I see for $125, but $20.80 shipping. Size 10, says barely worn, no scratches. I mean, they look perfect. So they're $300 boots for $125 plus $21 shipping. I see another pair with a little more wear on them for buy it now for $89 plus $21 shipping. So these are top of the line, absolutely as good as you can get. And I suggest I have no financial interest in Thursday boots. It's just that I think that quality is really important. Durability is really important. And going forward, shoes are really important. Really important. And I see people, I have to laugh. Maybe it's not polite, but internally I laugh. When I see people in the store with flip-flops, when I used to see them in the store with flip-flops, I would kind of smile to myself. What an idiot. What an idiot. If the car breaks down, are they going to be able to get home in flip-flops? Are they going to be able to walk anywhere in flip-flops? Why are they subjecting their feet to diseases of the urine and whatever else is on the floor at the Chinese factory outlet? Why would they do that? They're not thinking. They're not thinking at all. I'm looking. So the Thursday boots that I have laces, and they go above the ankle. So there's a lot of leather in them. So look for, if you want to see what I'm talking about, it's called the Captain Thursday Boot Company. The model is Captain. The other model is President. And they're very similar. It's just a slight style difference. Other than that, they're similar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eyelets for laces and on each side, and 2 hooks at the top. So it would be 7 crisscrosses. They're top of the line, and I suggest you consider them if, it makes sense to you. Kathy, we've expanded our garden, and other people have too. I was bidding on something on eBay. I thought it was a reasonable price. I was outbid. It looks like if I want this thing, I'll have to be in a bidding war. And it's a tool for gardening. It's a tool that relates to food. And what's happening, and these are old. These are vintage. These are, let's say from the 1970s, 50 years old. And it looks like, I have to fight for it if I want it. That's what's going on today. It's survival of the fittest. Now, so far it's semi-civil, But I don't think it's going to continue to be civil. There was a guy that was selling an item that I wanted to buy for food processing. And it was almost complete, but it was damaged. And I thought, you know what? I can weld it back together. And he said, it's damaged. Here's a picture of it. And so I said, okay. I offered him $5 less than he wanted. He said, no, I'm going to take it apart and sell it as parts. And I said, I'll tell you what. How about if I just pay you full asking price? No, I'm going to sell it as parts. People are really becoming greedy. Why would this guy take this thing apart into, let's say, 8 pieces or 10 pieces, sell them individually? Why would he go through all that work when I was ready to, willing and able to buy it right then and there? It makes no sense to me. But that's what's happening today. We're not able to get the parts we need. We're not able to get, it's not like January. It's not like December. It's a whole new world. Kathy, what are your biggest concerns about supplies that you want to lay in and have for your family survival?
Oh, Vince, it's food and clothing and garden seeds and tools. I mean, if something breaks and you don't have a replacement, good luck unless you have a way to fix it. One of the tools that I use, I garden a lot, and it's called a Felco pruner. Felco, F as in Frank. And I've had these for over 20 years, and I bought replacement blades once. They're really, really durable. They cost me probably it's been a while that I've had them, 20 years, I think. Probably $20, $25 I bought them. And I also bought a knife. It's called a Felco folding knife. And, a tree saw, I'm sorry. And that's really a good quality, too.
Well, rest assured, you can still get that Felco pruner for $45, Kathy.
Wow. Vince, I have to go. I'm sorry.
Hey, Kathy, thanks so much for being with us. I'll see you. I'll see you next week, right?
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. Well, I can see that we've got a call on hold. Klaus, Jason will get to you in just a couple minutes. He's he's really, really busy. I wanted to mention there are things that I can't seem to find. So, for example, the furnace filters that we use here in our house, I have been cleaning them, and spraying them with end dust and putting them outside. I spray them with an air compressor. I wear a respirator, and I blow them out. And so these inexpensive furnace filters that used to cost $1, I've used for 15 years. Same ones. I just blow them out with a compressor. I determine which way the wind is blowing, and I've got glasses on, eye protection, and I've got respiratory protection on, and I've got long sleeves on, and I blow out with the compressor the dust, and clouds of dust, go flying through the air. Make sure it's not in the way of any laundry or the dogs or any of the animals and so forth. And then I take the furnace filters and I stack them all up, and I spray them outside with end dust, E-N-D-U-S-T. It creates an electrostatic charge, and it traps the dust better than not doing it. So a furnace filter can last a really long time. Well, I decided that maybe I should get, a couple replacements. They're impossible to find. Now, I did find a case of 10 of them, roughly $100. What used to cost $1 is now $100 for 10. So what I'm saying is it's very difficult to find the things that you used to be able to find. And one last thing, and then George is going to be with us in just a minute. I want to tell you about Seattle. So in Seattle, the city has been part of the city has been taken over by people with firearms. Now, what is President Trump going to do? Is he going to go in door to door? Is he going to go with M16s and grenades and tear gas? Or is he going to shut off the electricity? If he does that, the people may burn down the buildings. If he shuts off, gas, natural gas, if they have it, people may burn down the buildings. If he shuts down the food deliveries, people may burn down the buildings. So it's kind of a bad situation. So what they may do is build a wall around the encampment. build a wall around the area that's been occupied by those who threw out the police. The police are not there. So if they build a wall, they can starve out the people who are in there. And then the ones who have firearms may shoot their way out. Or they may set fire to everything and shoot their way out. So it's a really miserable situation. But what if they shut off the water? What if they shut off the electricity? What if you have a well and you're dependent on the electricity to have your well pump work? 3 days without water, you're dead. 3 days without food, and you're pretty weak. You're not dead for 3 weeks, but you're pretty weak. If you're hypoglycemic, you have a problem. So it's a really terrible situation. So do you have enough water? Do you have a plan for water should the electricity fail? Should you not be able to run your well pump? Do you have a plan should the city shut off your water? 3 days you're dead without water. Do you have a plan? Now, buying cases and cases of water, you may think that, you've got 4 cases of water and you're good for months. That's not true. The amount of water that you're going to use is going to be well over a gallon a day. George in New Hampshire, welcome.
Hi, Vincent.
Hey.
You mentioned Seattle. Not to bog down on that. There's other things to talk about, as I know. By the way, I think you should have a big sign over your farm, and you know what it should say? It's a Mr. and Mrs. Finelli Garden of Anarchy.
Well, and so many people think that anarchy means murder, rape, mayhem. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means no one's in charge. And for us, it works really well. I mean, there's nobody in charge of this little hamlet down the road from us. Nobody's in charge. And it's really peaceful. And it can be like that where a lot of people live. We police our own. And and if there's a guy who just isn't very polite, well, nobody likes him. And he feels a little uncomfortable. Actually, he feels real uncomfortable. Actually, he moves out. And nobody likes him. Hey, George, we'll be right back. George has called in. George in New Hampshire, USA Prepares Instructor. You've got some tips, George. Please continue.
Yeah, there was one thing I wanted to mention about Seattle, but before I do, if you have a pair of shoes or boots or sneakers that you really like, or even if you don't like them, especially these days, and you want to make them last, a very simple way to do it is to get those shoe inserts that have like a spring or a knob at one end, and it's got the shape of the foot up towards the front. What do they call them? Like shoe trees or shoe, do you know what I mean? I know you know what I mean, Vincent, but I forget the word for them. But you put them in there in the insert, and they said, well, you're wearing your shoe all day long. Your foot is perspiring. In fact, you have sweat glands down there. That's one of the major places we have sweat glands. And your foot is breathing. So at the end of the day, there's perspiration and moisture lodged into that shoe. And also, as it dries overnight or the next day, you want it to retain its shape. And if it retains its shapes and you put those shoe horns in there, what'll happen, and if you don't have any, I guess you could use some wadded up paper or whatnot, but you'll find that your shoes will last a lot longer and look a lot nicer and retain their shape for a lot longer, which in the long run will be basically extending your investment in good shoes.
So I believe what you're talking about is it's a shoe tree stretcher.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a stretcher, but just something that when you slide it in, it fits, but it still has a little tension. So they come in different sizes, medium, large, extra large. They have the stretches, but the stretches are more like I think they say your nose, your ears, and your feet continue growing throughout your lifetime. Sometimes slightly less in some people, slightly more in others. But in other words, yeah, it's like a stretcher of sorts, but it retains the shape. And I've found that my shoes last a lot longer and retain their shape, and I just stand up better. The other thing I'd like to say, I'm sorry.
One second, George. My parents had those, and we still have them here. And I believe what you're talking about is it's a piece of spring steel, flat spring steel, like that would be used to band lumber, but it's springy, and it has like a wooden, or they did have a wooden end that would go at the toe of the shoe, and a rounded back end that would go by the heel, and you would slide this in, and it would just put just a little bit of tension to keep the shape of the shoe while you're not wearing it. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so they were painted. They were made out of wood, and they were painted wood with this spring between the front end where the toes go and the rear where the heel is, and you just slide them in your shoes while you kept them in the closet, for example. And what would happen is the spring would, just a flat piece of metal, it would arch upward, and it would keep the, if you had laces, it would just arch up to allow more air into the shoe, as well as not letting it shrink, not letting the shoe shrink from the moisture that was in the shoe while you were wearing it. And heck, how long do they last? I don't know. The ones we have here must be close to 100 years old.
Okay. They made them out of the foot part up front. Sometimes they're made out of a heavy-duty plastic. Sometimes they're made out of metal. But for the most part, I've seen them made even out of cedar wood, which is a nice idea. The other thing is, too, Vincent, is I found that if you get some decent quality hand cream that you'd use for your hands or chapped skin, whatnot, you can rub that into the leather of a shoe as just a quick in-between polishing sessions, replenishing and nurturing the shoe, which will, again, keep it from drying out, because it was formerly it's a piece of leather. So, in other words, it's no longer it's no longer part of the animal that provided the leather, so that there's no oil glands there. So what you do to compensate for that is to just get some nice quality. I find some nice quality, and you can use this on your leather holsters and other leather apparel. You just get some nice quality that you would use for your hands, some clean hand lotion, and just rub that in there. And an old toothbrush, I don't throw away my old toothbrushes. I found multi-purposes for them. If you take an old toothbrush and you dip it into the polish that you're going to use for your shoes, that you should do once in a while, to also make them maintain and make them age nicely, where they get that nice hue of well taken care of leather. You take an old toothbrush and you dip it into the polish, and then you scrub in between where the soles meet the uppers of the shoe or boot. You run that along the seam, and that'll waterproof and keep water from seeping into that things, and will go a long ways to providing you with a waterproof shoe.
Absolutely, and we don't throw anything out around our house, including toothbrushes, and they have lots of purposes. We use them for scrubbing small areas. Ultimately, they end up in the automotive shop, and we use them for scrubbing automotive parts. So we are now in the world of the first Great Depression, where our grandparents didn't throw things away, because they didn't throw things away for a lot of reasons. One, they never knew if they could get another one of them. And the one they had is better than none at all, even if it had wear on it. So socks, we got accustomed to socks being disposable. You poke your toe through the front of the sock, just throw it away. Nope. We're going to be at the point where if you can get thread and a needle, you're going to be fixing your socks. And so quality counts. Quality counts. And what kind of socks do I buy? I only buy one kind. And what color are they? I only buy one color. So all my socks are black, and they're gold toe socks. Period. That's it. Why? Because gold toe seems to last way longer than any other brand. And when I buy socks, I buy the same ones I just bought the last time, and the time before that, and the time before that. So they're all the same. And so when socks go to sock heaven, wherever that is, you start out with, 5 pairs of socks and you end up with 4.5. Where did that one go? I don't know. But if they're all the same color and they're all the same brand and they're all the same size, you only lost one sock. You didn't lose a whole pair of socks.
It's like
That's what
having
we
a
do.
spare tire for your feet.
Well, boy, that you brought up a sore subject. That really frosted me when I saw what happened in Minneapolis, where the police were just popping every single tire in a Kmart parking lot. Must have been 50 cars there, and they flattened every tire on every car by puncturing the sidewalls. Can't fix that. You cannot fix.
Did they say why they did that? Or did they give any kind of official announcement?
Yeah, they did. They said that the reason that they did that was because it was to keep people safe by preventing those vehicles being used as weapons. These are people that drove, parked their cars, off to the side, out of the way, where it was safe, and then walked to the protest. And because the cars were there, they could have been used as a weapon, to mow people down or to transport things. I don't know, maybe bottles of water, maybe some food, maybe a jacket. I don't know what. Maybe some milk in case they got sprayed with pepper spray by the police. Maybe some Band-Aids and some iodine in case they got beat up by the police. I don't know what was in these cars, but these were vehicles, personal vehicles, that were destroyed by the police. So,
Vincent,
here's the thing, class. You want to bring a phone if you're going to be protesting, but you also don't want to bring a phone because you're going to be tracked. So the police have a record of who goes to these protests because you're bringing your personal tracking device. So if you can bring one that does not, a camera kind of a thing, that's a good thing. Or video camera, that's a good thing. But a phone that can track you, that's not such a good thing. George, please continue.
Vincent, you mentioned Minneapolis, but you also mentioned Seattle earlier. And
yeah.
I'm pretty sure you'll remember this incident, although I think most people, it just went by the wayside. But it always bothered me and it frosted me. Remember about 21 years ago, they had the police in Seattle. I'm pretty sure it was Seattle, about 90%. I don't find much information about it on the web, but I remember it because it was along this line of something about the police stood down. I think they were given an order. It was in Seattle, and they had about 100 individuals dressed all in black pants, black sweatshirts or sweaters, and they were wearing ski masks. And they had rocks or bricks, and they had and they went in a downtown area, and you could tell the downtown area had those big, remember in the stores that had the big, long viewing windows where they'd have store displays there. These things could be I'd say maybe the better part of 50 to 100 feet long and probably taller than the average sized man half again. Remember those windows, those huge windows that they had?
Yeah, they're display windows. Sure.
Right. Now, I remember, I guess Walmart doesn't have that, but that's another subject. I had to throw that in. I'm sorry, Vincent. Anyway, but I'll tell you. But I remember that the police were standing right nearby when all this was going on, and they were told to stand down. And I could tell by looking at the bills and other things that these guys were hirelings, but they were wearing masks so they couldn't be recognized. And they went to town on those windows. I didn't see any other people like pedestrians around or anything. They proceeded to break every window in that section of the downtown. Do you remember it about 20 years ago? And then they walked away. Now, I know what I would have done as a police officer if they were there. I would have basically told the commander, you go to hell. I'm here to protect and serve. You're not going to allow them to trash our city like that. What's wrong with you? And even if it meant my job, I would have went in, and let's just say those guys would have been on the ground, and they would have been handcuffed, and they would have been charged for the full amount for those windows and then some, and a lot of court time and a lot of court costs and jail time. Now, do you remember that incident that happened?
I don't, but I do know that one of our instructors in the Northwest, not in Seattle, not in Washington, he and some of his buddies got together and they protected their city. These are just a bunch of guys, and they decided they weren't going to have any of this where there's looting and destruction of property. They were not going to allow it. And they protected the city. And they, the guys who were going to invade their city did not. That made the national news. So I'm not going to steal his thunder. He's going to be on the air with me within a week or so. So I really don't want to pre-announce this, but he was there, and he told me about it. And so he did exactly what you're talking about. He protected. Now, is he being paid for it? No. Did he get paid for it? No. He just thought it was his duty to protect his village. And he and his buddies did. And there were enough of them, and they were armed, to carry that out before it got bad. We'll be right back. George, if you'd like to stick around, that'd be great. So, class, very quickly, make sure you get what you need right now, if you need it. I'm not saying spend money you don't have. Be judicious in what you do. But if you need it, chances are it will be more expensive and harder to get later. Let me give you a case in point. George mentioned, we've got George online, and Kevin is waiting. So during the break, I ran into the closet and I looked at a tin of shoe polish, Kiwi, Kiwi brand. It's a 3-ounce size, and bought it years ago, and had the original price label on it, 69 cents. 69 cents for 3 ounces. I looked on the internet during the break, and it looks like the same tin. It's not the same tin. The new and improved size is 1/3 the size. It's like 1 1/8 ounces. And it's $7 for 1 1/8 ounces. They used to be 69 cents for 3 ounces. So now you get, it's 10 times more expensive for 1/3 the amount. Or another way of looking at it, it's 21 times more expensive than it used to be when I last bought shoe polish. Any quick comments, George? We've got Kevin on hold.
Yeah, I'll just make a couple of things real fast. One is, if those police wanted to do that in that parking lot, how hard would it be to just let the air out of the tires? Because most people don't carry those little compressors that saved me, and I'm sure you many times, that you could just plug into a cigarette lighter, and it's like a tire inflator right there, and it's usually in a small container or box. That's one. Two, I call it the cannoli factor. I remember this as a boy, right? I had the privilege of growing up in an Italian community. And what it was I noticed I liked cannolis. So I said, all right. I said, I remember they were like 50 cents, and they were rather large because the bakery was competing with your grandmother or your mother. So what ended up happening was that one day I remember I went to the store to buy a cannoli, and I'm a kid, and it's like I look at it, and it's like all of a sudden the size has shrunk to half size, and the price has doubled. So it didn't. Right. It wasn't rocket science. All I said, pretty darn good. I said, they cut it in half, and they're charging me twice as much. And I always remembered that. And I noticed that with excuse me to use this, and I don't get off, is the Clorox bottles. You ever notice? We know the average size of Clorox bottles, but if you go in the stores now to buy them, they're a half size, and they're charging more. I think they're charging almost double, or at least a third again more. Don't you, Vin?
Absolutely, and the same thing has happened to ice cream. So a half a gallon of ice cream is, it's a new fun size. It's real small.
All right, yeah. I know I got to get off because I know Kevin's waiting. So, hey, good talking, my friend. You have a nice weekend. God bless.
You too. Thank you, George. That was George. Kevin, welcome. Hey, Kevin, you're on.
Hey, Vincent, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm pretty frosted as usual. I'm watching the country burn down. I'm watching dumb people everywhere you look. The generally dumb public, the people who allegedly represent our interests have no clue. They're dumb as a box of rocks, and we pay them for it. Yeah, I'm pretty frosted. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I get to hear people cry about their ice makers and disposers not working while the world's burning down around them. So it's idiocracy at its finest.
It is.
Were y'all just discussing, I just jumped in after a service call I did. Were y'all just discussing the World Health Organization chaos in Seattle?
Oh, yes, chaos in Seattle. Yes, that we were discussing that.
If you remember the big riots from from the World Health Organization protests in Seattle, I think 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's what George was talking about. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought too. So there's a show based out of Portland, another excellent broadcaster I listen to regularly, Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis. And last week, or June 5th, he had on Norm Stamper, who was the Seattle police chief at the time. And they discussed the UN Strong Cities initiative and how that's been implemented and rolled out since 2015. And they discussed how, the objective is to basically defund the local police and bring in their, UN, maybe it's private security or maybe it's foreign security. But the show is really great. If anybody wants to hear that police chief's perspective, he is very apologetic, and he thinks that was the biggest mistake of his career, what happened in Seattle. I thought it was really interesting. So it was Norm Stamper on Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero, June 5th.
I'll see if I can do some more research on that. One of the things I wanted to mention to our class was how to buy on eBay. And I guess I'm not going to have time to do it. Next broadcast where we have a chance, I'll share that thought with you. How to buy on eBay the best way, at least the way I found. Do you have any quick suggestions in the last 20 seconds, Kevin?
Definitely look at the ratings of the sellers because there are new ones popping up all the time who are pretty shady. Try to buy from Americans if you can.
Yeah, it's getting harder to do. Kevin, it looks like we're going to see you on next week, right? Next Friday.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you and Kathy. Thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you for being with us. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. And you might want to go to the bank now.